die every year due to cardiovascular diseases. And therefore, tomorrow, the world is celebrating the World Heart Day, of course, to create awareness concerning this particular danger. Tonight, we are having Dr. Robert Mathenge, who is a senior interventional cardiologist with over 40 years experience in the practice of medicine. We are having him tonight to talk about the issue of cardiovascular diseases and non-communicable diseases. Welcome, Dr. Mathenge. Kindly tell us what is all about the World Heart Day. Why is it being celebrated each and every year? Why has it been seen as an essence to be celebrated as a day across the world?
For asking me to participate in this. This is part of a global effort to create awareness about heart disease, and it is normally done by healthcare workers of all cadres, and also, of course, other non-governmental and governmental organizations. Myself, I'm an interventional cardiologist who works here in Nairobi, meaning I'm a cardiologist who does operations using minimally invasive methods. And as such, I'm well versed with the activities and the needs of our heart patients. Now, the reason this day is important is because cardiovascular disease is the main reason people all over the world die prematurely. Mm-hmm. And it is such that the last numbers, like in 2016, 19.8 million people died from cardiovascular disease. And on top of that, another 36, close to 36 million were left with disabilities like heart failure, stroke, etc. Because the 80% of cardiovascular disease, I must mention, Irene, is heart attacks and strokes, 80%. So that's why you find ourselves talking more about heart attacks and strokes, because out of those 19.6 million, about 80% of them may have died from heart attacks and strokes. And the significant thing about cardiovascular disease and countries like ours, we classify ours as low and middle income countries. Now, 80% of cardiovascular deaths are in the low and middle income countries, such as ours. Can you imagine that? There is cardiovascular death in the high income countries of the North, like Europe and America, but they have managed by some way to delay their death from being premature to, like, for instance, the first heart attack occurring close to the age of 70 years. That's when people are retired, okay? They are already retired, their children are out of the house. That with cardiovascular death, 90% of them in countries such as ours are under the age of 60 years. What does that mean? It means the heart attacks and strokes are striking people at the peak of their careers, when they are most productive, when the children are still in the house. Is devastating. So recognizing that this is a major problem and it is preventable, because 80% of cardiovascular disease is known to be preventable. Can you imagine? 80%. So recognizing that, and recognizing that there is very little awareness all over the world regarding the fact that you can protect yourself from getting heart attacks and strokes. Country federations of heart federations, Kenya, Uganda, Brazil, they are called World Heart Federations, which are made from the country organizations like Look Into This, came together and decided, why don't we have the whole world focus on the heart, okay? And this now became the World Heart Day, which is celebrated on 29th of September every year.
Dr. Mathenge, you have mentioned that it is celebrated each and every year. What can you say is the significance of the world celebrating this particular day? What can be one thing that can be pointed out to us as a world or as a globe celebrating this particular day every 29th of September?
The key message is that there is danger out there called cardiovascular disease. It can kill you or disable you. We know that you don't know, because we know that, like, for instance, the causes like high blood pressure, 56% of Kenyans in the last country steps survey done have never had their blood pressures taken. So, so why do we want to celebrate it? Because we know that you don't know that there is a killer lurking at the corner. When you look at how many people have ever had their cholesterol checked in this country, the last figure showed only 97, close to 98% have never had their cholesterol taken. So can you imagine the need for a day in which people are educated, awareness is created against this danger? So that's really the significance of the day.
Mm-hmm. So I'm sure that our viewers back at home, or the common Mwananchi back at home, is questioning or is asking, what can we do to keep our heart healthy, so to speak, or to avoid these particular diseases, cardiovascular diseases? As a doctor, you have been in this field for quite a long time. What can you say that the common Mwananchi or our viewers can, what are some of the measures they can put in place to avoid being a victim to this particular danger?
Yes, like I've just, the first thing is to recognize that heart diseases and stroke are a real danger to all of us. Whether we are, it doesn't matter that we are in a low-income country like Kenya. We know now that today, if you go to any hospital, half of the admissions are due to what we call non-communicable diseases, including heart disease and stroke. So we do know that this problem is with us. The question is, what has brought it? Okay. Now, what has brought it and what puts us in danger? It is factors that a diet that is rich in salt, okay, low in vegetables, low in fruit, sugar, carbohydrate, protein, and the wrong fats, okay, because there are some that we call essential and good fats. Diet is very important. If you want to protect yourself from developing heart disease and therefore getting disabled early, then you have to seek and know about a healthy diet. Number two, we can expound on that in a little while. We know that people who do not involve themselves in adequate physical activity, which could be regular exercise, okay, regular programmed exercise, or just physical activity that may be related to work. There are people who walk for transport to get to the boda or matatu, or to the bus. They walk 3 kilometers. That may be enough exercise for that day. There are people who walk in their offices. They're on their feet and they're walking around. They do 10,000 steps in a day. That is some physical activity. Those people are not sedentary. So, but there are some people, and we know that in the last survey done in Kenya, like only about 6% of Kenyans do, programmed exercise. So, but there are many, by the way, because of the nature of our economy, who engage in physical activity, large numbers than that. So that 6% is not really as critical, because we know most Kenyans walk. They walk from Kibera to industrial area. They walk from city center to the offices all around town. So in other words, physical activity is important. So make sure that you're involved in physical activity, whether work-related, transport-related, or programmed. Make sure that you do not smoke. There's one thing that has absolutely no benefit, never been proven to show any benefit. People have looked, even with microscopes, see whether there's any benefit to it they have never seen. Smoking. If you smoke, you should stop. If you don't smoke, don't start. What do we know? We know that if, for instance, you are a smoker as an adult, you are likely to lose 15 years of your lifespan just by virtue of smoking. 15 years. When you compare yourself to Mr. X or Mrs. X, your good friend who doesn't smoke, is likely to live 10 to 15 years longer than yourself. And you are also likely to spend many more years later with a poor quality of life because of smoking. Other things like excess alcohol. A little amount of alcohol, 1 or 2 units as is defined, is never known to cause any harm. But we advise people not to start, because there are few people who start and addicted end up with liver. But if you drink, we don't tell you stop, okay? We tell you calm down to 1 or 2 beers, 1 or 2 glasses of wine, 1 or 2 shots of whiskey. For ladies, for women, normally it is on the one. When I say 1 or 2, women are for one. It's not because of any gender discrimination. It's some physiology which shows that women, when they take 2 glasses or more, when they are not able to metabolize it as better as men. I don't know why. I mean, I hate to be making that statement, but it is what is in the books, okay? Now, so in other words, those are behavioral aspects, okay? Now, if you don't eat the correct diet, then you end up with excess weight, which we call overweight or obesity. Again, we know that this, particularly obesity around the tummy, which we call central obesity, is related to adverse outcomes like heart attacks and strokes. And that's why we sometimes do come to our offices. We may sometimes do either the waist circumference, and we have a certain waist circumference for men below 102, for women below 88. And sometimes also we do the waist hip ratio. If the waist hip ratio is above a certain number, like 0.9 for either man or woman, women 0.85, men 0.9, then there's a risk there. So now I've talked about those risk factors. Now, all those things, what do they lead? When you don't eat a proper diet, when you don't exercise, and then what happens? Then you gain weight, and then you may develop other what you call NCDs, non-communicable diseases. These are diabetes, hypertension. They come from the things I've just described: hypertension, diabetes, elevated abnormal fats, what you call cholesterol, etc. Once you develop those, they now have a way in which now, plus, of course, the person may still be smoking. There may be the factors we've talked about. You find that these factors now damage the arteries. They kind of have a continuous damage to the inner lining of the arteries. And this inner lining, once it's damaged, then it attracts some hard stuff like fats, cholesterol, minerals, so that the inner lining of the arteries has deposits in it. Finally, that opening of the artery becomes narrowed and therefore starves the organ of blood. When the heart is starved of blood because the coronary arteries are blocked in those ways, over those risk factors working for many years, then one can get either angina leading to a heart attack. If it is the brain, then one may get a stroke. If it is the legs, one may get what we call peripheral artery disease and pain when you walk. If it is the arteries of the male genital organ, the penile organ, then people get ED, and that's erectile dysfunction. And that's why today we are saying, if a man develops erectile dysfunction from the age of 40, he should run straight to a doctor for a check to know what their risk is for a heart attack. Because we know that ED precedes heart attacks by 3 to 5 years. And the reason is the same processes that are happening in the heart arteries are happening in those little arteries of the penile organ, but they happen to be very small. Therefore, they close fast. Because they are too small, they close fast. So ED becomes a signal for erectile dysfunction, becomes a signal for heart attack. And therefore, by the way, we do have a way in which these days we are able to improve the circulation. We're able to grow new tiny blood vessels within the penile organ, but that's a subject of another day. But we do have all blood vessels found in people with these risk factors like smoking, diabetes, hypertension, all those ones that I talked about. When that is the cause, and a certain treatment that is offered, we regenerate newer blood vessels in the penis. So there are other kind of smaller factors but they are also important, like stress. Most heart attacks are triggered by stress. People who have had enormous stress, either work-related, domestic, political, all manner of stress, is a major trigger for heart attacks as well. So you need to be able to manage your stress. Otherwise, despite doing all those good things, you may find that stress has neutralized the benefits of all those efforts. And the second one, which people tend to ignore and think is not very important, is the sleep. Studies have shown that if you don't sleep enough, again, you increase your risk for heart attacks and strokes, etc. So you need to sleep at least 6 to 7 hours, 6 to 7 hours in a day. Again, too much sleep is not recommended. So I'm not trying to create a case for people who want to rest in their houses. Oh, if I don't sleep, I'll get heart attacks. No, we say 6 to 7 hours. Too little, not good. Increases your risk. Too much increases the risk as well. But those are very important but critical factors that people need to know. And the final one people need to know is that there are some people who are predisposed to heart attacks because of genetics. Those are people in whom a father may have had a heart attack before the age of 45, or the mother before the age of 55. For those people, what they're supposed to do is to identify the risk factors and work on them very, very, very carefully and strictly. If you work on them, you can delay or even postpone getting that which was prescribed by your gene. So people should not give up just because they have a genetic predisposition. So when people get heart attacks at that age, then you start thinking there are other operating factors other than the diet, this and that. But for people getting heart attacks at the age of 70, 75, genetic factors are not very operational at that point.
All right.
Yes.
Dr. Mathenge, as you continue, there was a report that was launched in 2018 concerning the national management guidelines for management of cardiovascular diseases. From where you sit, do you think the guidelines have been quite implemented, and whether Kenyans have been educated and awareness being made to them concerning the risk of cardiovascular disease and non-communicable diseases?
Now, I think first of all, to have guidelines is a very, very critical step, because I can tell you there are probably not more than 25% of African countries that have guidelines, okay? Probably not more. So Kenya is doing very well in having guidelines, okay? And now when it comes to implementation, this is part of it. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm implementing these guidelines. By doing what? By creating awareness. Tomorrow, a lot of other people will be doing it. We have an NCD alliance, okay, all over the country, which draws, which is multi-sectoral, draws people from all sectors. So it's work in progress. A lot of work still needs to be done, okay? But I can say that the first initial steps are commendable.
Away from that, we are living in a time whereby we're having the pandemic, and doctors have said that people with underlying heart conditions are at a risk of being infected with COVID-19. Being a doctor, have you witnessed these particular cases, and what can be your take concerning that?
That's very important, because you see, when COVID came in, nobody, not the doctors, we were all the same. You and I were the same. We didn't know what this was. Okay, it's only that after that we've used a lot of time learning from people started doing research and all that. There are people who already have heart disease, and we know from the outcomes, right from Wuhan coming to Italy, Portugal, everywhere coming as they came, we knew that those people who already had coexisting heart disease seems to be ending up in hospital, ending up in ICUs, and mostly also, a good number ending up dead as well. So it appeared like there was. And then, of course, we realized that this was because COVID was coming to hit somebody whose organs have already been hit. So your heart has already been hit. It's supposed to support your lungs. Then your lungs need a lot of support, and your heart is already weakened. It cannot support. So those people would end up faring, even straining the heart, so the heart also fails. But we saw, what was found later on, is that when people looked at the hearts of people who had not even shown any signs of serious disease, they actually found the viruses in the heart muscle. And on top of that, people who have been positive, they probably just had a minor flu or others. When we've checked their heart subsequently in studies done in many places now. You find that the heart is independently also affected. So COVID-19 is not just a flu, is not just a respiratory illness. It does affect the heart as well. And even in completely normal people, it may leave sequelae there that may need to be followed up and tested. So if you have had COVID-19, it's good at some point when you go for a checkup to say, kindly also ensure that my heart is okay, because we know that there are some people who are now just coincidentally being found to have some heart issues, weak hearts, and all that. And there are also COVID-19. One significant thing we noted about it is that there are people who presented as if they were having a heart attack. If we had time, we would have talked about the signs of a heart attack. Severe chest pain. We do an ECG and we find, hey, this is a heart attack. Only to realize, and most doctors actually got into trouble because they rushed such people to where we rushed them to the cath lab, put catheters, because they have a classical heart attack, only for the test the next day to come COVID positive, ICU, and doctors infected as well. But fortunately, we learned in this country, we learned very early from the experiences of other places. Cardiologists like myself had gotten into a lot of trouble in other countries for going in to treat people for heart attacks, when actually it is COVID-19 which was causing increased clotting in the vessels everywhere in the body, including the coronary arteries, and therefore presenting exactly like a heart attack and getting, of course, health work. Therefore, for somebody who has an underlying heart condition, if you, first of all, you have to protect yourself you have to protect yourself. You have a better reason to protect yourself than the average person. Secondly, if you are positive, you are the kind of person who may not wait, okay? If you get the earliest symptoms, you should be admitted to hospital and monitored there. You know, today we do tell people that if you are positive, only just have flu symptoms, stay at home. If you now develop a high fever, your oxygen saturations are going down, or go to hospital. For people with underlying conditions, go to hospital early.
All right. All right, Dr. Mathenge, we know that health is a devolved function. I don't know whether you feel like we have enough facilities to deal with the cardiovascular diseases, because some people have lamented that most of the cardiovascular centers are based in Nairobi. Therefore, in other counties, it still remains a problem, a quite huge problem, given that this concerns matters health. Do you think maybe county government should embrace the aspect of having cardiovascular centers in their respective counties?
If you look at the overall care available, it is still obviously, it requires a lot of improvement. We are not giving optimal care for the medical conditions that are there. We are not able to give optimal care. For instance, even if it is heart attacks, the optimal care that is required for heart attacks, you're not going to find it in any district hospital in every county. Okay, there are efforts to try and do things to approximate the optimal care that you'd get if you went to Nairobi Hospital, Aga Khan, or Mata. Okay, but if you are in Garissa or you're in Migori, that kind of care, first of all, the equipment may not be there. The trained personnel, because it takes years and years to train a cardiologist to do the kind of things that would be required to give optimal treatment. So in other words, there is a lot of room, and there needs to be focus, because this is a condition. Remember, the numbers are building up. By 2030, the predictions are that we're going to have lots and lots of people, and remember, prematurely getting heart attacks. So the country will not be able to stand seeing people just dropping dead and not being able to get adequate treatment. So there are a lot of efforts, and this information the government is aware, to try and bring in equipment. And remember, there was a big quest in 2015. The will, to do that is there. Remember, the equipment worth billions of shillings. Okay, there have been issues mentioned about that, but look at that. Look at the will to do that. That means somebody realized we need to do this. As to whether it has happened effectively or not, the will is there. And for a country, the thing is to continue pushing on the will. Okay, there will be challenges as you try to push, but clearly services are not adequate. There are great attempts, okay, to bring them up to par, okay? The will is there, and therefore where there is a will, a way will be found.
Many thanks indeed, Dr. Mathenge. Finally, because you're pressed on time, what can be your final remarks, even as we anticipate to celebrate the World Heart Day come tomorrow? And what can be your sentiments concerning what the government should do and what Kenyans should do to protect themselves from these particular cardiovascular diseases?
Now, I think my final remarks are that Kenyans need to be, they know that they have ways to go in terms of getting the kind of care that they would want. But I can tell you that they should also be proud with themselves, because the level of healthcare in Kenya is approximate anywhere in the world. The only thing is that we have not been able to spread it everywhere. But the kind of care you get in Nairobi is the kind of care you get anywhere else, so that the need to go out will become less and less and less important in future. So we should be proud of the fact that that other countries, when they come to this country, when they come to this country, all they do is appreciate how much Kenyans have been able to do. For instance, even procedures like the ones we were talking about, treating heart attacks, opening up arteries and all that. We've been doing that for 23 years. We were the first people to do that in this country, in sub-Saharan Africa, other than South Africa. Okay, can you imagine? So Kenyans need to be proud of their achievements. We still have a long way to go. There is no country as yet which has reached that utopia. Okay, no country. But we have a lot to do. We should not be complacent. And as far as CVD is concerned, remember that 80% of mortality and morbidity from CVD, heart attacks and strokes, is preventable. And in this part of the world, this country is happening is causing premature death. There are things we can do to help ourselves so that we can live long, healthy lives as given by the Creator.
All right, that has been Dr. Mathenge giving us a perspective of where the nation is in terms of creating awareness when it comes to cardiovascular diseases. He says 80% of the diseases that come with cardiovascular issues are preventable. Therefore, it all takes your actions. What are you doing? What is your diet? Avoid smoking and all of that. We're taking